Paul Deegan, CEO of News Media Canada. I have a question for you, sir. If I were to take you back in time when you were the Deputy Executive Director of the National Economic Council for Bill Clinton's White House, or you were working in the office of the late Ted Kennedy, or you were working for the Democratic National Committee, if I were to tell you back then that in the future, it would be patriotic for a U.S. citizen, not all, but some segment of my population, to boo the Canadian national anthem, would you say I was totally, completely out of my mind?
I would have. I would have had a lot more hair back then, but I would have thought you were nuts. And I would have thought you were crazy if you told me that Canadians would boo the American anthem. Like, it just doesn't make sense. We're best friends, and we have been for a very long time.
At least I thought so. I mean, I don't know I feel like I walked into a looking glass. Do you ever feel that way? And the universe is just upside down sometimes?
Yeah, no, it just feels like we're waking up from a bad dream right now.
All right, so here we are in our program. Welcome to E&P Reports, a vodcast we host here at Editor and Publisher Magazine, dedicated to the news publishing industry. And I decided, with your consent, to bring in the face of Canadian news media, Paul Deegan, CEO of News Media Canada. Paul, by the way, I don't even believe you're Canadian because of all the stuff you did down here in the United States. I have 3 questions I ask a Canadian to prove they're Canadian. And let me do that right now. Do you mind? Can I ask those questions? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, spell the word color.
Okay, COLOUR.
Wrong. Pronounce this word, PROCESS.
Process.
Wrong. Okay, what is the last letter in the English alphabet?
Well, I actually grew up watching American Sesame Street over a border station, so I'm going to say Z.
Okay, so 2 out of 3 make you a Canadian. Paul, I know we're laughing, and we're trying to make light of a very, very tough situation, but technically now, our 2 governments are at war. Not the kind of war that's happening over in Ukraine or the Mideast. We're in a trade war, and I'm getting emails daily from U.S. newspapers showing me their bills just to run the press and get a lithoplate. I'm sure you've got the same pressures going on up there, and correct me if I'm wrong, all we're trying to do together is tell our stories and do our jobs to produce great local journalism. Am I right? That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things is if you look at newsprint for U.S. newspapers, a lot of it comes from Canada. So if you stick a 25% tariff on that puts enormous pressure on U.S. publishers. Conversely, for Canadian publishers, we actually get most of our ink from the U.S. We get it from Flint and Sun Chemical. Some of that's actually made in Tennessee, some of it in Illinois. So we use your ink and you use a lot of our paper.
It's just across the border like we were friends. And now, with all the challenges we have with big tech and with keeping our audiences and eking out some advertising revenue, we got this on our backs now. And we're going to break all that down as E&P Reports goes one-on-one with Paul Deegan of News Media Canada on the backside of this message.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
All right, Paul, give it to us straight. What's the pulse up there? How does the Canadian press and the Canadian political class How are they reacting? What are they saying? What's going on?
Absolutely. So first of all, I guess I would say on both sides of the border, one thing we got to be careful about is just the rhetoric. We got to make sure that, everyone's in check. We don't want to, knock anyone into the boards, to use a hockey analogy. So we've got to make sure that the rhetoric is constructive on both sides. One of the interesting things is Canadian politicians, and in particular, the Ontario Premier Doug Ford, he's been going on U.S. cable networks a lot. So, you'll almost every night, if you turn on Fox News, you'll see a commercial from the province of Ontario talking about the importance of the two-way relationship. And Premier Ford has been talking to Americans and to sort of that mega base of the presidents directly. And I think he's speaking to them in terms that they understand. If you look at it, if you're an American worker and all of a sudden you're paying more for your product, that hurts. If you're, there's just so many things in terms of our economy, how integrated they are. I'll give you just one example, but every morning when I wake up, I eat this cereal, and I'm showing you the French side of the box, okay?
All right. For those of you that are on Spotify or what have you, you got to go to the video channel, our YouTube channel for this. It says Koshi Golian. Go ahead, Paul.
Kashi Goleen cereal, and then you're seeing the French side. Anyway, on the side of the box, it says in French, Produit des EUA, so product of USA, right? So we're eating your cereal every morning. If I look around my house, I mean, my refrigerator, I checked, it's made in Wisconsin. My stove or range is made in Tennessee. My outdoor gas grill is made in Illinois. So the economies are so integrated. We sell stuff to you, you sell stuff to us. If you take out the energy that we sell you, we actually buy more from America than you buy from us. So it's a pretty balanced relationship. You've got way bigger trade problems with China, Mexico, Germany, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and India than you do with Canada.
It's crazy. I mean, and I live here in Tennessee, and you drink our bourbon, right? I mean, and I drink single. I don't drink bourbon. I know that makes me an outsider. I drink single malt Scotch, so my stuff's is tariffed up right now. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, let's. I just got an email from Dean Ridings of America's Newspapers. You likely saw it before we did this recording, where he's now pleading with members, and he gave them talking points to start doing advocacy, start explaining the strain on the industry to the decision makers. Are you doing the same thing up there? What's going on? How are you putting up the bat signal, as we like to say?
Yes, we are. So we're about to head into St. Patrick's Day on Monday. And on Monday, we're launching a campaign which encourages Canadians to buy Canadian, but also in terms of their own advertising, to advertise locally. The Canadian digital advertising market is $15 billion or so dollars. And, most of that money is going to Google, Meta, and Amazon. And what we're telling people is advertise direct with your national newspaper, your local community newspaper. It's so important to sort of support the home team, especially in a time like this where we find ourselves, unfortunately, into a trade war. And from our perspective, it's a war that is entirely avoidable. And we hope that we get to a place between the two countries that the rhetoric goes down a little bit. We've actually got a new prime minister sworn in today in Canada. And so I think that's an opportunity for a reset between the prime minister and the president.
Yeah, but your buy local campaign is in response to us and tariffs. In other words, don't buy American products, buy local products. It's more of the patriotic thing up there.
Absolutely. And Canadians, I think if you look at, for example, when you mentioned bourbon, so if you go to the liquor store in Ontario, which is owned by the province, there's actually a blank space for bourbon. Like there's no bourbon on the shelves right now.
You got to drink rye, right? I mean, that's, you guys make rye.
And so there's a real sense, like people are looking at the grocery store, like, am I buying an apple from Ontario or is it from Washington State? So, I think we want to get back to a place where we've got a respectful relationship between both countries. Sure, there are going to be trade irritants. And, there is, for example, on dairy. I think we have to look at that, both sides. The president has raised concerns about the border in terms of illegal migrants coming in and about fentanyl, and our government is addressing that. So we have to find a way to find solutions because we have been best pals for generations, and we've got to get back to that.
I wrote a letter to my editorial this month was an open letter to the Murdochs, begging them for an Edward R. Murrow to come through on the Fox News channel. In other words, I mean, the Wall Street Journal, you're seeing the cracks, right? Every morning editorial is now basically saying, let's get back to some reality. And it's about the tariffs. It's not taking some of the other polarizing, social issues that I don't even want to get into. It's saying tariffs, we've got to stop this. Down here, we need our senators to get a little cover from the press. Does that make sense? Because if they go after the president on tariffs, they're shot down that night by Hannity. Do you get my drift? You don't have that problem up there, correct? You don't have you have actually an even press that's on giving both sides of the equation, or what's the difference between our news culture and yours during this amazingly weird, polarized world?
I mean, there is still some polarization in Canada, but I would say, by and large, we've got a news media that is, focused on telling stories that are fact-based and fact-checked. If you look, for example, at the Wall Street Journal on the editorials that they're coming out, and they've been day after day basically saying this is the dumbest trade war in history. Ordinary Canadians who might not ordinarily read the journal, I can tell you they're all looking at those stories and those headlines right now. So I think what the Wall Street Journal is doing is actually doing a tremendous service to both countries in their editorial coverage on this issue.
All right, so buy local is how you guys are handling the response. We're here just trying to get some sanity back. Meanwhile, I'm getting tons and tons of go ahead. I'm getting tons and tons of emails from publishers saying, I can't afford to print. In fact, a 140-year-old newspaper in New York State just shut down in Cortland. Are you going to see the same problems there? Because you're picking up your ink from us, or are you a little bit, is it going to be easier for you guys to print? What are you hearing from your constituents right now?
Right now, printing and distribution are both are challenges, I think, for publishers on both sides of the border. And we've got particular challenges in Canada in that some newspapers are distributed by Canada Post, which is like the US mail.
Right.
And Canada Post so we've got some sort of no junk mail in Canada. You put a little thing on your door that says no junk mail, and the post office won't deliver it. Community newspapers, for example, were always exempt from that. Canada Post changed their policy about a year ago. And if you've got a Canadian Tire flyer, which is sort of like an Ace Hardware flyer in your local newspaper, that's now deemed junk mail. So for a newspaper that's delivered to every house in the neighborhood, let's say, that's now deemed junk mail. So it's impractical now for the publisher to have that insert in their newspaper. We had a lady just shut down her newspaper in Alberta. It's been in business for 114 years. With that change from our post office, it's costing her $24,000. $24,000 was the difference for her between being in business and serving her community and closing up shop. Like it's really sad. And as you know, newsprint is scarce and it's expensive. We had a situation a couple of years ago where we had some publishers in Ukraine who were asking us if we could help them source newsprint, and it was basically impossible.
There's another phenomena going on up there, correct? I mean, your country, thanks to us, is more united than it's ever been in the past few decades. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, President Trump has done more for Canadian unity than anyone else in a generation. Right. I mean, this has really brought Canadians together, with a sense of pride, but also with a sense of purpose. But at the same time, even though we want to repair the relationship with the United States, we're certainly looking both, east and west. Whether it's Europe or Asia, right. Now, in terms of diversifying our trading relationship, because it's sad to say, but we just no longer see the U.S. as a reliable trading partner. I mean, we've got a signed deal, CUSMA, the free trade agreement, which is signed by President Trump. And unfortunately, that's effectively dead right now, I think, from most Canadians' perspective. So we've got to get back to a point where we sort of trust each other. I think something that's important for U.S. publishers to look at is covering those stories of, the ink plant in Tennessee that's sending ink north. There was something on the news in Canada the other night, and it was a guy named Mike Hill, who owns the Chevron station in Blaine, Washington. Most of his customers are coming from the United States. They're no longer coming to see him, even though he's selling gasoline at 20 cents a liter, less than the Canadian gas station dealer in South Surrey, British Columbia. So, most Canadians live within 100 clicks of the Canada-US border. Cities like Buffalo, Detroit. I mean, there's a whole bunch of cities in the United States on the northern border that benefit from that cross-border relationship. And unfortunately, that's all at risk now.
I actually was at the Burrell conference in Phoenix recently, and I met the vice president of Buffalo Toronto Public Media. We had lunch together. And I got to tell you, I mean, this man was hurting. I mean, because he has dual audiences now that are like, it used to be one common DMA. Does that make sense? And now,
absolutely.
And that, go ahead.
And on his donor base, so that's our local PBS affiliate out of Buffalo. I mean, his donor base, I don't know exactly what his breakdown would be, but there'd be a good number of donors from Canada. I mean, it's a terrific product in terms of what PBS puts on.
Unbelievable. Okay, we got to wrap this up because, attention spans in the U.S. market are so feeble right now. I mean, you got to cut these things off at 20 minutes, which is re-verified at Burrell with all the podcast experts. So you got your final megaphone here. Go ahead and say what the Ontario Premier has been saying, I love Americans. Give us that final pitch to this audience of thousands of news publishing executives from the Canadian side north of us. What would you like to say?
So first of all, we've been best friends forever and ever. Let's get back to that relationship. So we need to make sure that the rhetoric is dialed back. But I would say first and foremost for publishers and editors in the United States, cover those North American stories, how both countries benefit from trade. The goal here is to grow the pie. And, if the United States throws massive tariffs on everyone else in the world, builds a big wall around it, the United States is going to be poorer for it. We're going to be poor, and we're not going to be able to buy your goods. So let's figure out a way to work through this, to have common sense policies. Let's reshore jobs to North America so that we can all be stronger and prosper together.
Paul Deegan, President and CEO of News Media Canada, a personal friend, a friend of our magazine, and a friend to the entire American news publishing industry. Am I allowed to say that? I'm editorializing now.
Absolutely.
I do not feel like I'm at war with you, sir. And we will continue some form of a relationship across this war border we have right now. And I will promise you to make sure I sneak a bottle of our Tennessee bourbon up there just for you. How does that sound?
I'm sure my kids would drink it on me.
Thanks, Paul. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Mike. Bye-bye.